There are periods in my life where I just feel stuck. Now, this isn't to say that there's nothing for me to do. If anything, there's just way too many things I want to do and to achieve. But there are just moments in my life where I just feel like I'm making very little progress. It's a feeling that no matter how hard I work or how much energy I put into something, I'm just sort of spinning my wheels and there's nothing I can do about it. And it's not like I'm incapable of achieving all these great things. I think I'm capable of doing what I want to do. It's just that the amount of energy or time I put into something doesn't really correspond to the amount of progress that I actually make. So I guess the point of this video is really to explore what is going wrong and to find some sort of starting point that can help us to get unstuck and get out of this situation where we feel we aren't making much progress at all. Now, I don't think there's any specific answer or solution to all of this, and to be honest, I've been thinking about this all for quite some time, but I have reached a tentative conclusion where I think that we're all sitting on these series of spectrums, as I'm going to call them, which sort of determine our ability to get things done, make improvements in our life, and essentially get us to where we want to be. So the idea is that the better we can navigate these spectrums, the easier it will be for us to sort of get out of a rut. So let's take a look at them. The first of these spectrums is the doing-living spectrum. And if we're over towards the doing side of the spectrum, we see personal progress and self-improvement as this thing that has to be done actively. In other words, once we've found the area that we want to improve, we feel like we have to read all the books and sort of find all the resources about that thing to eradicate our specific weakness. Now, this mindset isn't necessarily a bad one, like it's good to be proactive about self-improvement, but when taken to an extreme, it can lead to self-sabotage. So what had once been a healthy routine or useful tool for self-development paradoxically becomes this sort of prison where we don't feel good or great about ourselves at all. Like, I remember at the beginning of last year, I did some journaling and I got into the habit because I'd read all these great things about how it can help reduce stress and reduce anxiety and reduce worry, and I thought, wow, this would be really, really useful. And to begin with, it was, but over time, I felt more of an obligation just to keep journaling, and my satisfaction about journaling was linked more to the action of checking off that I'd done the journaling rather than the actual act of journaling itself. And so what had really happened here was I got so caught up with the whole science of and sort of research behind why journaling is great, but I was never really introspectively sort of looking at myself and deciding, is this something that's actually truly benefiting me? So I've been having a little think, and I think the solution to those of us who identify with this doer attitude need to sort of work out how we can begin to live a little more. And that takes me to the living side of the spectrum. In short, sometimes the best way to get unstuck and to find your path forward from a particularly tricky situation is to just live your life normally and learn from the experiences that come your way. So don't try to hit these audacious, ambitious and crazy goals. Instead, just go out there, make some mistakes, embrace the journey, and just see what happens. As George Bernard Shaw says in his book, Advice to a Young Critic, a man progresses in all things by making a fool of himself. So going back to the journaling example, I probably would have fared much better if I just lived my life normally and made all the mistakes I wanted and then reflected on those experiences whenever I felt like it, rather than trying to set this rigid goal of sitting down every day to write in my journal. The problem was my mind had got so trapped up in the art of doing the thing rather than the act of living my life and learning from that experience. I guess though there is also a risk of going too far towards the living side of the spectrum too. Like, it's very easy when we're just living our lives to get complacent about what our weaknesses are, and if we feel like there's nothing massively wrong with ourselves, then we're not really going to make the effort to improve ourselves. So there is some element or some degree of balance that does need to be had between the doing and the living sides of the spectrum. Right, the second spectrum is the Automation-Orchestration Spectrum, and this is all about understanding how our brains work. So when I say automation, what I really mean is that there is some sort of process going on in our head which is causing us to feel stuck. And the more that we can be aware of these automated processes, the more we can begin to orchestrate and design the life that we want to live. For example, the law of least effort states that if there are several ways of achieving the same goal, people will eventually gravitate to the least demanding course of action. So let's say I'm trying to get fitter. I could quite easily type into Google, how do I get six-pack abs? And this would give me a fair amount of information about how to achieve that goal. The other approach I could take is hiring a personal trainer, which is clearly a lot more effort. So as long as the results I get from Google reach my certain level of my certain threshold of acceptability, then I'm just going to go with that. There's no point me going out of my way, spending money, liaising with some other person, just to achieve pretty similar results to what I could achieve by just typing the same thing into Google. But that very same thought process is also the reason that I'm not achieving my goal. Like, by taking the extra effort to get a personal trainer also means that I'm going to have to be accountable to someone, and that means I'm much more likely to achieve my goal. So because my brain's automated process has forced me along a route of doing the easier thing, I'm now less well off and I'm going to feel more stuck in the future when it comes to achieving my fitness goals. Another example is confirmation bias. In other words, our tendency to listen to the information that confirms our existing beliefs. So if I think I'm this amazing YouTuber, I'm more likely to listen to the person who gives me a bunch of praise about how great my videos are, rather than the person who's giving me this amazingly constructive feedback and trying to help me improve various aspects of my videos. So confirmation bias is another way in which our brains are working against us and making us feel more stuck. There are literally loads of different examples, and at some point I might actually make a separate video about this. But the point is that we're sort of naturally inclined to feel stuck because of the automated processes happening in our brain. What we need to do then is to become more aware of these shortcomings and take steps to address them properly. Like, we shouldn't just blindly accept or reject what people say to us. We should take more time to reach a conclusion and not just jump to certain decisions, and properly weigh up and analyse any thoughts and decisions that we need to make. For example, if I'm stuck on a project, like if I'm stuck with YouTube, what I'll do is I'll write down a long list of things where I feel like improvements can be made, and to be honest, there's a lot of different things where I can improve this channel. And by having this long list of things, I instantly know where I can start making positive changes to my life. And this really does help me to feel less stuck, and it helps me to overcome this limiting and automatic bias that tells me that things are generally okay. The theory-action spectrum is probably the most important spectrum if you're feeling stuck, especially if you're knee-deep in a whole bunch of self-improvement literature. For most of my life, whenever I felt stuck with something, my first sort of action has always been to find the most relevant self-help book and read it from cover to cover. And my general thought is that this is something that we all tend to do. But the problem of doing this is that we end up in this kind of self-development loop where we're always looking at the theory and never actually applying any of this information in the real life. Basically, I've come to see self-help books and those sorts of resources as a form of avoidance. Like, dating is the classic example here. Like, we'll say to ourselves, I don't know how to ask this pretty girl out on a date, and I don't know how to get a number, and I don't know when to kiss her, and we think about all these different scenarios in our head, and we think that the best thing to do about it is to turn to a book and find the best book on dating or something along those lines. And all we're really doing is trapping ourselves in this loop of analysis paralysis where we feel like we're doing something about it because we're reading stuff, but the truth is we're still faced with the same problem once we've read the book. We still need to go out there and ask the girl on a date. We still need to go out there and kiss the girl. The problem still exists. The solution then is to move towards the action side of the spectrum. No matter how desperate you are to get a partner, learn a language, or get fitter, the theory that we're learning in books is only going to take us so far. What we need to do is actually get out there and do something about it. This was one of my biggest problems with learning Spanish. I'd literally spent 3 years learning all the books, learning the grammar, learning all the rules, and I thought I knew the language really well. Like, I could write it pretty well, I could speak it to myself pretty well, but as soon as I went to Spain and tried to speak with the locals, I completely crumbled. I felt like a complete beginner. So although I kind of knew the theory, the fact that I hadn't actually put it into practice before meant I was no good at Spanish. Or at least it felt that way anyway. But the crucial point is that practical mistakes are a critical part of self-improvement. Joe Schweitzer from the YouTube channel Better Ideas uses an excellent metaphor to drive this point home. He says, better to hack and slash through life with a dull sword than sit inside with a sharp one. In other words, until we start using our knowledge in the real world, it's purely theoretical and it's not going to get us anywhere. Nothing beats going out there and making some mistakes and using our knowledge, even if fairly clumsily, because doing so is crucial to getting us out of a rut and start making some progress. Now, when I first started Digestible Notes, my website that's all to do with like making law and other academic subjects really easy to understand, I had this goal of getting 10,000 users a month. And to begin with, this goal was super exciting. I know it wasn't huge or groundbreaking, but for me, this felt like a really good goal to set. And to begin with, it really motivated me to pump out content on the website and start promoting it across the internet. But over time, that very same goal started to make me feel pretty shit. And the reason I discovered was that it began to dawn on me that this goal was really quite difficult, especially when you're starting a new website. And so each day it felt like I was making very little progress towards that goal. And I started to question myself, like, was it even worth it? In other words, I started to feel very stuck. And I came to the conclusion that the reason why I felt so stuck was because I'd set an outcome goal. In other words, I set this huge, ambitious, singular goal of getting 10,000 users, which was very, very hard to achieve over the coming months. And I don't necessarily think that setting a big goal is a bad thing. It's when you set a single goal that is huge, that's when it becomes a problem. Because you're not getting that instant, positive feedback from achieving much smaller goals. Like, I would be much better if I was setting a goal like getting my first 10 users on the platform, or uploading my first 10 posts, or something like that. To be honest, we do this shit all the time. Like, we set a goal of wanting to lose 10 kilograms when it comes to our weight, or we set a goal of wanting to make £1 million a year. And these huge goals are things that aren't going to be achieved for a long, long time, and we just end up feeling really stuck. The solution I found is to focus on process goals, i.e. much smaller goals that we can far easily track and manage, and also celebrate. So for example, when it comes to losing weight, instead of saying something like, I want to lose 10 kilograms, it's much easier to track, manage and celebrate something like, I want to lose 200 calories a day, or be 200 calories underneath my maintenance calories. And it's having that sort of element of control and making the goals more manageable and achievable that's going to help us achieve what we want to achieve and help us to feel less stuck. So like, if I had celebrated and been happy with getting 10 extra users every day or every week or whatever, then that would have made me much happier and more motivated than going, I want to achieve 10,000 users a month in 3 years' time. So it's these small wins that help us to feel less stuck, and they drive us more confidently towards our goals. Finally, there's this relatively recent phenomenon that I've noticed, and you probably noticed it too, where people tend to be like doing this whole self-development thing just so that they can show it off on social media. Now, I don't have any numbers that back up what I'm saying here, but I wouldn't be surprised if like 20+% of people upload stuff to do with fitness or mental health or whatever, just so that they can show other people that they're doing all these great things and they're progressing so well, and just to sort of show off, essentially. I've definitely done this. Like, I've gone to the gym where I've posted on social media and been like, hey, look at me, I'm so great, I'm at the gym doing a workout, and what I don't tell them is that this is the first time I've been to the gym in about 6 months. And this isn't to say that I'm not actually working out at the time, but a non-negligible percentage of why I actually went to the gym in the first place was so I could post on social media about it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that self-improvement has become this thing where we're just sort of doing it to impress other people rather than to sort of help ourselves. And the problem is that we think that we're becoming this well-rounded great person by doing all these amazing things, but basically we're just doing the thing to keep up appearances, and it's through that process of doing the thing to keep up appearances that makes us feel really, really stuck. The shift in our mindset then needs to be back to ourselves. Sure, you can share all your wins on social media and stay accountable, but don't just share stuff because you want to impress other people. The problem is that this is sort of inauthentic, and at worst it's just going to make you feel far more stuck in the long term. And this whole approach to staying accountable and using social media for self-improvement is kind of what I want to do with this YouTube channel. So I'm not saying this is a bad thing to do. Like, I want to share with you the ups and downs of my own progress and share what I think works and what doesn't work. And to be honest, I think I would do that even if nobody watched these videos. The whole point is that I want to make these videos for myself and not to impress other people. And I think that is the best way to approach social media when it comes to self-improvement and self-development and helping you to get out of a rut. I basically believe that the right way to approach things is from a position of, I just want to live my life, I want to try to be more intentional about how I'm spending my time and learn from the experiences that I have. And I genuinely think that if we all learn to sort of live in this way, we'd feel a lot less stuck, because we wouldn't be bound to rigid rules, we wouldn't have any sort of, ambitious expectations, and we wouldn't feel like we have to listen to the opinions of others or achieve certain things to achieve our happiness. The important thing is that we're living and experiencing and learning every single day, and I feel that is the most important and crucial step to feeling less stuck.